Hey, and welcome to RCKicks. On today's show, well, we got a bit of a mishmash of projects that are kind of bumbling along. But the first one we're going to cover in this video is this. We're going to fit all these parts, yeah, I went a little bit crazy, into an SV2 from Schumacher Racing that I'm trying to restore back to a shelf queen. So we've got new arms, new chassis, new bulkheads, all kind of bits and pieces to make it mint underneath as if it was a brand new runner. And yeah, I went a bit nuts and picked up a whole optional chassis for it as well from Schumacher. I didn't say I was a financial genius, did I? So we're going to do that, as well as I have an update for you on the Kyosho Ultima JJ that I have been tinkering with for quite a while with your help, and it's coming along. I'm still missing a few key parts, but hopefully they're coming too, so we're going to cover that as well. Right, let's crack on. I've been looking forward to this one. Now, I've laid out everything, but I think the plan is going to be this. We'll take off the front section and the rear as a whole off the chassis. Then what I'll do is I'll change the bulkheads and the arms on the front and the rear. Then we'll put them back on the new chassis. Then after that, we've got to paint up the lower tray. It's all cut out for me, I think. Just got to paint it up white. Then we've got to put the holes in it, screw that to the chassis, and then I think that's as far as we can take these. I've managed to pick up some new front hubs off Vinny. I was supposed to go racing, but I missed it and I didn't get a ticket, so I'll have to pick them up next time I go racing. So yeah, I think that's going to be it. Right, let's shut up and get on with it. So the first thing we're going to do is remove the top deck and saddle pack battery tray. You can actually get a stick pack conversion for this under U4047, which will make life a bit easier running this, because obviously saddle packs are a lot harder to get hold of these days. While I was tearing down the buggy, now was a great time to look for any bent pins or any issues from wear and tear. Removing the optional rear 4-degree alloy strap was a bit of a challenge, so I replaced the screws with some titanium ones. I had to be careful not to mess up the shims because I wanted to replace the shims back as they were in the car originally. Replacing the rear wishbones, I decided to go for the medium flex option, which is U4054. These are currently selling for £9.99, but stock seems to be limited, so I think once these are gone, that's it. Okay, so while I transfer all the hardware onto the new wishbones, you can actually see the optional parts that are on this. Now, this has the optional alloy gearbox case U3991 and the lower trans housing. There's two, there's the left and the right, which is U4030 and U4034. These are expensive options at £28.49 and £14.49 each. These options add up to be £57.47 alone. So if you're in the market for a used one of these, check out what options are actually on the buggy, as it can really add some value. While I was working on the rear of the car, I've replaced the rear bumper, which was U3694. This obviously was damaged because it sits at the back of the car. Every time the car hits the ground, it scratched it, and you get two in each pack. Not sure what I'm going to do with the other one, mind. So I decided to pick up the optional S1 chassis, which is U4128. Apparently more flexible, and this is really designed for dirt and low traction tracks. Now, the reason I picked it up is this is an official Schumacher part, and I thought down the line, as this buggy becomes more collectible, having an optional chassis versus the standard one would make it more desirable. Well, that's what I told myself. This is £26.99. Now, I'm a massive fan of these purple alloy parts. It really shows off the quality of this buggy. So that's the rear all done. We can now turn our attentions to the front. So there's a bit more to be done on the front of the buggy. I'm replacing the front bumper, which is U3690. They're £5.99. The bottom plate is U3689. That's £9.49. And the front medium wishbones, which are U4054, and they're £9.99. One thing that's a little bit strange is this buggy hasn't been messed with at all. Everything seems to be pretty straight, but two things that are actually wrong is the front tie rods and the rear ones. Now, I've looked up the correct parts I need in there. U3213, that's the standard tie rod, and that's the rear, which is 53 millimeters. Also, the front is U3214 and they're 60mm, because the ones that are on the car at the moment you can't really adjust. They're kind of maxed out or they're too short. Now, the person that built this buggy originally did a pretty decent job of it. There is Loctite that's used, but none of it is caked on, making it really difficult to dismantle, because the one thing that really worries you when you're dismantling a buggy that was made for you is that you're going to end up stripping a load of bolts and having to drill them out. Now, there is a few upgrade parts that this doesn't have that I would like to get, but obviously trying to keep the budget down. I don't want to go crazy, as I'll never see a return on it even when this buggy becomes more desirable. Now, I'm not looking to make profit on this buggy, but you definitely don't want to be upside down in your collection. Two more option parts I would like to add. One would be the alloy steering track rod version 2, they're $18.99. Also, U3934 alloy hub carriers. I found one set and they're $29.99, so they're a little bit expensive. Right, so I've swapped out the wishbones. We're now putting it all back together again. That's all the new parts now fitted. Once I get the front bulkhead back onto the chassis, we can turn our attentions to the under tray. So there you go, that's the front all done as well. Well, for now, until I get the tie rods. Right, let's connect it back up to the new chassis. Yeah, I must remove all my mucky fingerprints off the chassis before I fit the under tray. So after a couple of hours, it's all looking rather spiffy. It's all back together as it should be. New chassis and a few new bits and pieces. All the damage from the bottom has been removed, so it's pretty much back to shelf queen. The under tray was cut out for you, so I painted it up. One thing that's a little bit different is I'm not sure if this option chassis is fractionally longer, because when I look at the front here, the actual screw hole for the under tray, it needs an extra sort of 10mm to go right to the end. But it does fit okay, it's fine, you can use it. It was just a bit of a strange one to see where the hole was. I had to move it along a little bit. But it all clamps and it all fits as it should do. It just seems to be that this tail at the front here is a little bit shorter than it needs to. What I've done is I've actually put in a like countersunk washer, so that if it was to land, it wouldn't actually damage anything, and it looks fine. I just didn't want to stress out the front too much. Still got to do the body, that's the next thing, but obviously I'm going to send that off to be pro painted, as painting the Union Jack is going to be a nightmare. Now, I'm not sure when that's going to be. I'm waiting for the slot to come available so I can send it off, but my plan is, what I'm going to do is I'm going to buy a brand new body set to send to the painter. Because what I'm going to do down the line when that comes back is I'm not going to have the holes. I'm going to have Velcro on each side. So I'll remove the actual body mount posts and then just have it Velcroed. It would look nicer and smoother. But what I'm going to do with this body is I'm probably going to paint it up. And I've been looking for some Union Jack stickers. And I think I found one that may work. So I'm going to attempt that as well, because I want to see what that's kind of, how well that comes out, as that may be an option for you down the line if you, like me, don't have the skills to paint a Union Jack flag on one of these bodies. So that might be an option. So I'll do that. It's only going to cost me a few pounds, and I had this already. So that's the plan. I've also run out of servos at the moment, so I need to order a whole batch of new ones. So this car doesn't have a servo in the front, so I'll need to do that at some point as well. But the rest of the car is all neat and tidy, correct bolts. I did change a few bolts for titanium, the ones that were looking a bit sorry for themselves. So I swapped out some of those as well, mainly so I could show the difference between the original bolts and any ones that needed to be changed. It just stands out a little bit more. But it's pretty much ready to go back into the collection now. So another project that I've been working on behind the scenes that is a slow burning project, not one that I can do quickly, is converting the re-released Kyosho JJ into a replica. Just before we dive into this beautiful RC, if I could just ask you to take 2 seconds, if you've watched the videos and you've watched a few and you enjoy it, to hit that subscribe button. 58.6% of you that watch the channel aren't even subscribed. It costs you absolutely nothing. And being that we're such a small RC channel, every new subscriber really helps the algorithm find our content and push it out to more RC fans like you. Now, there's quite a few differences between the two, and they're not easy to actually change. The first one is the suspension. The suspension on the actual original one was the older version that you see on like the mid, and I've swapped them over. I managed to have a set, so I now have the correct suspension. These are friction collars, where the ones that came on this are the threaded one. So technically, yes, they are better, and yeah, I'm spending a lot of money and a lot of time making it worse, but more as it was in the original car. The big one is the rear tyres. Now the tyres that were on the original race car, yeah, you can't get those anymore. They're a nightmare. There may be an opportunity for some replicas coming, but they're not ready yet. We'll just have to wait and see on that one. But trying to find original tyres, yeah, real challenge. But hopefully, with your help, I managed to have sourced a set and they should be on their way. I did find some on eBay, but after 20 emails negotiating a ridiculous price for a set of tyres for an RC car, we agreed, and then he refunded me about 3 hours later saying he wasn't making enough money. So that was a waste of 25 emails, but I managed to have sourced them thanks to you. So when they get here, hopefully they'll get here. We'll just have to wait and see. Right, I think we need to take the body off because a lot of what's been done is underneath and it's coming along really nicely. So the inside is where I've put most of my work into, and it's close. It's not exactly, it's actually quite difficult to get the actual parts that were in the original. It's really difficult. I was surprised how hard it is. I'm kind of getting there with your help. Now, I managed to get a set of batteries with your help. They're not exactly the correct ones. I don't know if they came out at the same time and they were just a different option, or whether they were cells that were released just after. They're very close to the ones that are in the kit, so I'm really chuffed to get them as they're just so hard to find and in good condition. These are lovely condition ones, but not exactly right. The tape that holds them down, which he did, I actually had some of that, so I was really chuffed to have that look as well. Zip ties, obviously just got to find white zip ties, so that's pretty easy. The steering was completely different versus the re-release. The servo is turned 90 degrees, where in the re-release it's actually in a better position where it fits correctly. So the actual original car that was raced, the servo is stuck to the chassis with double-sided tape. Yep, it's not screwed down, luckily, because I didn't really want to drill any new holes in this. But when you go to fit it, the ears of the servo stick out. You can't fit them and the battery, so you have to trim them off, and that's exactly what he did in his car as well. Now, it's really interesting. As you're trying to replicate it, you realize where some of the parts have come. The aerial mount is off an RC10. The actual ball joints are from RC10, across the steering as well. So it was really interesting. Luckily, I had those parts, so I could actually get the correct ones to match. Now, I do know the actual servo that was used, but again, really hard to find one. Hopefully one will come up. I've got a search running for it. Now, one thing that came up that was really interesting was the actual weights that were put on the side. Now, being that this was in England at the time, it makes sense that to add a little bit more weight there, well, we just used pound coins because that's what was available at the time. So if you look really closely, you can see the Queen's head on the actual image. So what I did, I managed to find £2 coins online for sale. Now, the pound coins that he used have been discontinued now. We don't use those, we use a different pound coin. I picked up some 1987 coins, so pretty close to, you know, I don't know what coins they were. Then there's actually a pull tie over here, which was kind of right over the pound coin. The receiver was a Novatech one. It's not exactly the same one that I have, but it's very close. It's from the same range. Now, ideally, I would love to have the exact one, but it's really difficult to find them, whether they'll ever turn up or not. Now, the other thing was the electronic speed controller, and this is a harder one to do because the electronic speed controller is a Tekken. Problem is, you can't just put anyone in there because when the body goes on, it's got to line up so that the body pin goes over. So if you're going to do a replica of one of these, you've got to get an electronic speed controller that is the right size, otherwise it won't fit. And I've actually got a Tekken electronic speed controller, but it's too big, it won't fit, from around the same sort of time. It's just a different version. But again, someone has managed to find me one and they're sending it to me, so hopefully I can swap it over, and that, I think, is the correct one, or it's fractionally different from the same range, but it's the same, looks on the photograph like the same one. So that will be really good. So I haven't done much more than that. Also, I've got to drill 2 holes through here because on the original car, these wires pass through the upright. But I'll do that once the correct ESC arrives, and then I can solder it up, which is why I haven't soldered it up here. The aerial from the RC10 is in a different position, so I had to drill a new hole. So I was a bit like, but the holes were so far away, I had to put it in the correct position like the original car, so I did do that. As for the motor, well, I've got the correct motor in the car now as well, so I'm happy with that. So it's close. There's not much more I'm going to do to it. If I can get the correct servo, I'll fit that in it, but I'm quite happy. I'm using what's in it at the moment. It's a PS701. Also, the uprights would need to be changed to get the right colour of the vintage ones. So there you go, a massive thank you to everybody who's helped make this possible, and for all the people that are still sourcing me parts and getting them to me, thank you very much. It means a lot to actually get this one so that I can have it on the shelf. Now, I've seen people driving these at the track where I go racing, and they are amazing. If you dial them in and get them right, I've seen these up against modern buggies and they're not far off. So it's brilliant to see, even now, all that time later, it's still a real racer. And now I'm thinking I'd like to have actually raced one. They're that good, but I've got a different way with this one. This is just going to be a replica shelf queen, so there you go. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. See you on the next one. Bye-bye.